The lantern swung gently in Kieran Anderson's calloused hand as he crossed the moonlit yard toward his stable, every instinct suddenly screaming that something was wrong because the horses were far too quiet for midnight in New Mexico territory. It was late September in the year 1878, and Kieran had learned to trust his gut during his 32 years walking this earth. He set the lantern down carefully and drew his revolver, pushing open the stable door with his boot. The hinges creaked softly and he raised the light higher, scanning the interior. His 3 horses stood in their stalls, ears pricked forward, all focused on the same spot in the corner where he kept the feed. That was when he saw her. A woman lay curled in the hay, her dark hair spilling across the golden stalks like ink on parchment. She wore a torn calico dress that might have been blue once, but was now stained with dirt and what looked like dried blood. Her feet were bare, cut and bruised. She was so still that for a moment Kieran thought she might be dead, but then he saw the slight rise and fall of her chest. He holstered his gun and approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. As he drew closer, he could see she was young, probably in her early 20s, with a delicate face that was currently marked by exhaustion and what looked like a healing bruise along her jaw. He knelt down beside her, setting the lantern on the ground. "Miss," he said softly. "Miss, you cannot sleep here." Her eyes flew open, wide and terrified, the color of storm clouds. She scrambled backward into the wall, her breath coming in quick gasps. "Please," she said, her voice hoarse and desperate, "please do not send me back." Kieran raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "Send you back where?" She shook her head frantically, tears streaming down her face now. "Please, I would rather die out here than go back to him. Please." Something in her voice, in those terrified eyes, made Kieran's chest tighten. He had seen that look before in the eyes of animals that had been beaten too long. "Easy now," he said gently. "Nobody is sending you anywhere. You are safe here." She stared at him, her whole body trembling. "You will not take me to the marshal. Why would I do that?" "You have not done anything wrong, have you?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I ran away from my husband." Kieran felt his jaw clench. He had his suspicions about what kind of man would leave his wife in such a state. "What is your name?" She hesitated, clearly weighing whether she could trust him. Finally, she whispered, "Clara Vaughn." "Well, Clara Vaughn, I am Kieran Anderson, and this is my ranch. You look like you have not eaten in days. Why do not we get you inside, get you cleaned up and fed, and then you can tell me what you need?" She looked at him warily. "Why would you help me?" "Because it is the right thing to do," he said simply. "Can you walk?" Clara tried to stand, but her legs buckled immediately. Kieran caught her before she hit the ground, and she flinched at his touch. "Sorry," he said quickly. "I am just trying to help. I am going to carry you to the house, all right? I will not hurt you." She nodded weakly, and he lifted her carefully. She weighed next to nothing, and he could feel how thin she was through the worn fabric of her dress. As he carried her across the yard, she kept glancing at his face as if trying to figure out if he was real or some kind of trick. The ranch house was modest but well built, a 2-room structure with solid walls and a good roof. Kieran had built it himself 5 years ago when he first claimed this land outside Pinos Altos. He pushed open the door with his shoulder and carried Clara inside, setting her gently in the chair by the fireplace. "Let me get the fire going," he said, moving to build up the flames. Once they were crackling nicely, he filled a pot with water from the pump and set it over the fire to heat. Then he went to his small kitchen area and began pulling out food. Bread, cheese, some dried beef, an apple. Clara watched his every movement with wide eyes, as if she expected him to transform into something dangerous at any moment. When he brought the plate to her, she looked at it like she could not quite believe it was real. Go on, he encouraged. Eat. She picked up the bread with shaking hands and took a small bite, then another, and then she was eating ravenously, tears streaming down her face. Kieran looked away, giving her some privacy in her hunger. He busied himself heating the water and finding some clean cloths. When the water was warm, he brought a basin over to her along with the cloths. For your feet, he explained. They look like they hurt something fierce. Clara had finished the food and was staring at the empty plate as if surprised by what she had done. She looked up at him, and her voice was thick with emotion when she spoke. Thank you. No need for thanks. Let me see those feet. She hesitated, then slowly extended one foot. Kieran knelt and carefully began cleaning the cuts and scrapes. She winced but did not pull away. The wounds were not as bad as they had looked under all the dirt, though she had clearly walked a long way without shoes. How far did you come? He asked gently. I do not know exactly. Maybe 15 miles. I walked through the night and most of today until I could not go any further. I saw your stable and I could not take another step. 15 miles barefoot, Kieran said, shaking his head. You must have been desperate. I am. She took a shaky breath. My husband, Vernon Vaughn, he runs a mining operation north of here. He is an important man in these parts, or at least he thinks he is. People listen to him. If he finds me, if you tell anyone I am here, he will take me back. And what happened to make you run? Kieran asked, though he thought he knew the answer. Clara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was flat, emotionless, as if she had pushed all feeling down deep where it could not hurt her. He bought me. Not married me, bought me. My father owed him money, a gambling debt. Vernon said he would forgive it all if I married him. My father agreed before I even knew about it. That was 2 years ago. I was 20. Kieran's hand stilled on her foot. Your father sold you. To pay his debts. She laughed bitterly. Vernon was kind at first, or at least he pretended to be. But after the wedding, after it was too late, he showed his true nature. He is cruel, violent. He likes to hurt me, likes to see me afraid. I tried to be a good wife, tried to do everything he wanted, but it was never enough. Last week, he beat me so badly I could barely stand. That was when I knew if I stayed, he would eventually kill me, so I ran. Why not go to the marshal? Because Vernon owns the marshal. He owns half the men in this territory. Who would believe me over him? Who would help me? She looked at Kieran with those storm-gray eyes. I just need to get far enough away that he cannot find me. Maybe catch a train east, start over somewhere he will never think to look. Kieran finished bandaging her feet and sat back. You are safe here, Clara. I give you my word. Nobody is taking you anywhere you do not want to go. You do not understand. Vernon has men, rough men, who do what he says. If he thinks you are helping me, he will come after you too. Let him come, Kieran said quietly, and there was steel in his voice that made Clara's eyes widen. I did not fight in the war and survive 3 years on the frontier to be frightened by some bully who beats women. Clara stared at him, and something in her expression shifted. Hope, perhaps, or the beginning of trust. Why are you doing this? You do not know me. Kieran stood and moved to pour them both coffee from the pot that always sat on his stove. My mother, he said slowly, was not treated kindly by my father. I was too young to help her, too small to stop him. She died when I was 12. And I have always believed it was him that killed her, even if he never raised a hand to her that final day. Sometimes cruelty is slower than a bullet. He handed Clara a cup. I swore then that if I ever had the chance to help someone in her position, I would. So here we are. Clara took the coffee with both hands, holding it like it was precious. I am sorry about your mother. It was a long time ago. Kieran sat in the other chair. You can stay here as long as you need. I have a spare room you can use. Tomorrow we will figure out the next steps, but tonight you should rest. I do not want to impose on you. You are not imposing. You are accepting help that is freely given." He smiled at her, and it transformed his weathered face. "Besides, it will be nice to have someone to talk to besides the horses." Despite everything, Clara smiled back, just a small upturn of her lips. It made her whole face soften. "Do you live out here alone?" "For the past 5 years, yes. I have 160 acres, mostly cattle. I run about 200 head right now. It is not much, but it is mine. I built every fence, every building. Nobody can take it from me." "It sounds wonderful," Clara said wistfully, "to own something that is truly yours." "You will have that too one day," Kieran said. "Freedom is worth fighting for." Clara's eyes filled with tears again. "I want to believe that." "Then believe it." He stood. "Come on, let me show you where you will sleep." The second room was small but clean, with a real bed and a window that looked out over the yard. Clara touched the quilt as if it might vanish. "I have not slept in a bed in 6 months," she whispered. "Vernon made me sleep on the floor most nights, said I had not earned the right to comfort." Kieran felt rage burn in his chest, hot and fierce, but he kept his voice calm. "Well, you are not on the floor anymore. Sleep as long as you need tomorrow. There is no rush." "Thank you," Clara said, and the words seemed inadequate for what she was feeling. "Thank you for believing me, for not sending me away. Sleep well, Clara." Kieran closed the door softly and returned to the main room. He sat by the fire for a long time, thinking. He knew he had just made his life significantly more complicated. If this Vernon Vaughn was the kind of man Clara described, there would be trouble coming. But as he banked the fire and finally lay down in his own bed, Kieran found that he did not regret his decision. Some things were worth the risk. Morning came with golden light streaming through the windows. Kieran rose early as always and went about his usual chores, feeding the horses and chickens, checking on the cattle in the near pasture. He made himself move quietly, not wanting to wake Clara. She needed rest more than anything. But when he came back inside 2 hours later, she was already awake, standing in the main room looking uncertain. She had clearly tried to clean up. Her hair was braided and her face washed, though she still wore the same torn dress. When she saw him, she straightened nervously. "Good morning," Kieran said. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in 2 years," Clara admitted. "I did not mean to sleep so late. It is barely past 7. That is not late." He moved to start breakfast. "Do you like eggs?" "I like anything," she said. "Can I help?" "You can sit and rest those feet." But Clara did not sit. Instead, she moved to the basin and began washing the dishes from the night before. "Please," she said when Kieran started to protest. "Let me do something. I need to feel useful." He understood that, so he nodded and let her work while he fried eggs and bacon in his cast-iron skillet. They moved around each other in the small kitchen space with surprising ease, and Kieran found himself noticing things about her. The way she hummed softly as she worked, the graceful movement of her hands, the determination in her face even after everything she had been through. They ate together at his small table, and Clara looked around the room as if seeing it properly for the first time. "You keep a tidy house." "I learned early that clutter makes for a cluttered mind." Vernon's house was always a mess. He would throw things when he was angry, break dishes and furniture. I would clean it up and he would just break more. She paused. "I am sorry. You probably do not want to hear about that." "You can talk about whatever you need to talk about," Kieran said. "Sometimes speaking the truth of things helps take away their power." Clara looked at him curiously. "You are not like most men I have met." "I will take that as a compliment." "It is one." She took a sip of coffee. "What will you do today?" "I need to ride out and check the fence line on the western edge of the property. Had some trouble with wild dogs last week, and I want to make sure they have not found a way in. It will take most of the day." Clara's face fell, and he realized she was afraid to be left alone. "I can stay close to the house if you prefer," he added quickly. "The fence can wait another day." "No, you should do your work. I cannot expect you to change your whole life for me." She straightened her shoulders. "I will be fine here. I am just being foolish." "It is not foolish to be cautious after what you have been through." Kieran thought for a moment. "How about this? I will teach you to shoot before I go. That way you will have protection if you need it." Clara's eyes widened. "You would trust me with a gun?" "Why would I not? Vernon never let me touch his weapons. He said women could not be trusted with firearms." "Well, Vernon was wrong about a lot of things, it seems." Kieran stood and retrieved a small revolver from a drawer. "This was my mother's. It is a smaller caliber, easier to handle. Come on, we will practice outside." They went out into the yard, and Kieran set up some tin cans on the fence rail. He showed Clara how to hold the gun, how to aim, how to breathe and squeeze the trigger gently. She was nervous at first, flinching at the noise, but she listened carefully to his instructions. Her first shot missed completely. Her second knocked a can sideways. By the sixth shot, she hit one dead center, and the look of surprised pride on her face made Kieran grin. "You are a natural," he said. "I have never hit anything before," Clara said, staring at the smoking gun in her hand. "Well, you have now. Remember, only use it if you absolutely have to, but do not hesitate if that moment comes. Your life is worth defending." She looked at him with such intensity that he felt something shift in his chest. "Thank you for treating me like I matter." "You do matter, Clara." He left her with the revolver and ammunition, along with strict instructions to shoot first and ask questions later if any strangers showed up. As he saddled his horse and rode out to check the fences, he found his thoughts kept returning to the woman in his house. There was strength in her, a core of steel that had not been broken despite everything she had endured. He found himself admiring her, and perhaps feeling something more than admiration, though he tried not to examine that too closely. The day was hot and clear, typical for late September in New Mexico territory. Kieran worked methodically along the fence line, repairing a few weak spots and finding no sign of the wild dogs. He should have been focused on the work, but instead he kept thinking about gray eyes and a tentative smile. When he returned to the ranch as the sun was beginning to set, he found Clara in the small garden behind the house, pulling weeds. She had found one of his old shirts and fashioned it into a makeshift dress, much more practical than the torn calico. She looked up when she heard his horse and stood, shading her eyes. "How was your day?" she called. "Quiet and uneventful, which is the best kind. How was yours?" "The same. I cleaned the house, worked in the garden, practiced shooting a few more times." She smiled. "I feel almost normal." Kieran unsaddled his horse and turned him into the corral, then walked over to where Clara stood. The garden was neat and well tended now, much better than when he had left that morning. "You have been busy." "I like working with my hands. It makes me feel real again." She gestured to the house. "I made supper. I hope you do not mind. I found vegetables in the garden and some salt pork in the pantry." "Mind? I am grateful. My cooking skills are limited to eggs and burnt meat." They went inside together, and Kieran was struck by how different the house felt with another person in it. Warmer somehow, more alive. Clara had not just cooked but had arranged wildflowers in a jar on the table, and the windows were open to let in the evening breeze. Over supper, they talked more easily than before. Clara asked about the ranch, about the cattle, about life in Pinos Altos. Kieran told her about the town, a rough mining settlement that had boomed during the Civil War and was now settling into something more permanent. He told her about the other ranchers, about the struggles of making a life in such harsh country. In turn, Clara began to open up more about her past. She had grown up in Santa Fe, the daughter of a merchant who had once been prosperous, but gambled away his fortune. Her mother had died giving birth to a stillborn son when Clara was 15. After that, it had been just Clara and her father, and she had watched him spiral further into debt and despair. "I thought maybe if I married Vernon, it would save my father," Clara said quietly. "I thought maybe I could learn to care for him, that maybe he would treat me well if I was a good wife." But Vernon did not want a wife. He wanted property, something he could own and control. "Where is your father now? He died 6 months after the wedding. He drank himself to death." She laughed bitterly. "So my sacrifice was for nothing in the end." "It was not for nothing. You tried to save someone you loved. That shows the kind of person you are." Clara looked at him across the table. "You are very kind, Kieran Anderson. I do not know why, but I am grateful for it." They cleaned up together after supper, and then sat by the fire as darkness fell outside. It felt comfortable, domestic, as if they had been doing this for years instead of just one day. Kieran found himself telling Clara things he had not spoken of in years, about his time in the war, about the friends he had lost, about the dream of building something lasting in this wild country. "I came out here because I wanted to start fresh," he said. "Leave behind all the blood and death and make something good. Some days I wonder if I am succeeding." "From what I can see, you are," Clara said softly. "You have built a good life here. And you helped a stranger without asking anything in return. That counts for something." "Maybe we are both trying to start fresh," Kieran suggested. "Maybe we are," Clara agreed. 3 days passed in this manner, settling into an easy routine. Kieran did his work around the ranch while Clara kept house, tended the garden, and grew stronger each day. Her feet healed, the bruises on her face faded to yellow, and color returned to her cheeks. She smiled more often, and sometimes Kieran even heard her laugh. He found himself looking forward to returning to the house each evening, to conversation and shared meals and Clara's presence. She was smart and funny when she let herself be, full of observations about the world that made him see things differently. And she was beautiful, though he tried not to think about that too much. For her part, Clara found herself feeling safer than she had in years. Kieran never raised his voice, never made sudden movements that might startle her. He asked before touching her, even in the most innocent ways. He listened when she spoke and treated her opinions as valuable. He was everything Vernon had not been, and she found herself drawn to him in ways that both excited and frightened her. On the 4th day, Clara was hanging laundry in the yard when she heard horses approaching. Her heart immediately began to race, and she dropped the shirt she was holding and ran for the house. She grabbed the revolver Kieran had given her and positioned herself by the window, hands shaking. 3 riders came into view, rough-looking men who were clearly not just passing through. They reined in their horses in the middle of the yard and looked around. One of them, a big man with a scar across his cheek, called out, "Hello, the house. Anybody home?" Clara's breath came in short gasps. These had to be Vernon's men. They had found her. She was trying to decide whether to run or fight when she heard another horse approaching fast from the direction of the pasture. Kieran appeared, riding hard, and pulled up between the riders and the house. "Help you gentlemen?" he asked, and his voice was cold and hard in a way Clara had never heard before. The scarred man smiled, but it was not friendly. "We are looking for someone. A woman, dark hair, early 20s. Her husband is awful worried about her, thought maybe she came this way." "Why would she come here?" "Well, you are the closest ranch to the Vaughn mining operation. Just seems logical she might have ended up here if she was running." "I have not seen anyone matching that description," Kieran said flatly. "Now, if you do not mind, I have work to do." The scarred man's eyes narrowed. "You sure about that? Mr. Vaughn is offering a good reward for information. I said I have not seen anyone. Now you are trespassing on my land. I suggest you leave. Inside the house, Clara watched with her heart in her throat. The three men exchanged glances, clearly trying to decide if Kieran was lying. Finally, the scarred man shrugged. Fair enough. But if you do happen to see this woman, you should know she is dangerous. Stole money from her husband before she ran. He just wants his property back. She is a person, not property, Kieran said, and there was steel in his voice. And you are still on my land. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. For a moment, Clara thought the men might draw their guns. But then the scarred man laughed and pulled his horse around. Have it your way, friend. But you might want to think about where your loyalties lie. Mr. Vaughn is not a man you want to cross. They rode off, but Clara noticed they went slowly, looking around at everything as if memorizing the layout of the property. When they were finally out of sight, she set down the gun with shaking hands and sank into a chair. Kieran came inside moments later and went straight to her. Are you all right? They know I am here, or at least they suspect. And now you are in danger because of me. Tears streamed down her face. I should leave. I should never have stayed this long. You are not going anywhere, Kieran said firmly. He knelt in front of her chair and took her hands in his. Listen to me, Clara. I meant what I said. You are safe here. I will not let them take you, but they will come back. And next time they will not ask politely. Vernon will send more men or come himself. He is not going to just let me go. Then we will be ready for them. He squeezed her hands gently. You are not alone anymore, do you understand? Whatever comes, we face it together. Clara looked into his blue eyes and saw nothing but determination and sincerity. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. Maybe I do not know your whole story yet, Kieran said slowly, but I know enough. I know you are brave and strong and deserving of a life free from fear. I know that I care about what happens to you. He paused. I care a lot, actually. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition of feelings that had been growing over the past few days. Clara reached out and touched his face gently, and Kieran held very still, letting her make the choice. I care about you too, she whispered. I did not expect to. I did not think I could ever trust a man again, but you are different. I would never hurt you, Clara. I swear that on my life. I believe you. And she did. For the first time in 2 years, she felt something beyond fear and despair. She felt hope and maybe the beginning of something deeper. Kieran stood and pulled her to her feet. We need to prepare. Those men will tell Vaughn that I was evasive. He will know you are here. What do? First, we make sure the ranch is defensible. Then tomorrow I ride into Pino's Altos and talk to some people I trust. If Vaughn is going to make trouble, we need allies. They spent the rest of the day securing the property. Kieran brought extra ammunition into the house and checked all the weapons. He showed Clara the best positions to shoot from if it came to that. They brought water and food inside in case they needed to wait out a siege. As they worked, Clara found herself watching Kieran, noticing the way he moved, the capable strength in his hands, the calm focus with which he approached problems. She had been drawn to his kindness first, but now she was seeing other qualities: courage, determination, a quiet confidence that made her feel protected. That night, neither of them slept well. Kieran made a pallet on the floor in the main room so he would hear if anyone approached. Clara lay in bed listening to the night sounds, every creak and rustle making her tense. She wanted to feel safe, wanted to believe Kieran could protect her, but she knew Vernon's capacity for violence. Morning came gray and cool with clouds rolling in from the west. After breakfast, Kieran saddled his horse. I should be back by afternoon, he said. Keep the doors locked and the gun close. If anyone comes, do not open up unless you are absolutely sure it is safe. Be careful, Clara said. Vernon has friends in town. "So do I." He rode out and Clara watched until he disappeared from view. Then she locked the door and tried to keep busy, but her mind would not settle. She kept imagining terrible scenarios: Kieran ambushed on the road, Vernon's men surrounding the ranch, herself dragged back to that house of horrors. Kieran rode hard toward Pino's Altos, his mind working through options. The town had grown up around the gold mines, a collection of rough buildings that housed miners, merchants, gamblers, and the various people who made their living off all of them. It was not a gentle place, but there were good people here too. He went first to the general store, run by a man named Jacob Myers who had served with him during the war. Jacob was restocking shelves when Kieran walked in, and his weathered face split into a smile. "Kieran Anderson." "What brings you to town on a weekday?" "Need to talk to you, Jake, privately." Something in Kieran's tone made Jacob's smile fade. He called to his wife that he was stepping out, then led Kieran around back of the store where they could not be overheard. "What is going on?" Kieran told him everything about finding Clara, about her situation, about the men who had come to the ranch. Jacob listened with a deepening frown. "Vernon Vaughn," he said when Kieran finished. "I have heard things about him. Nothing good. He runs those mines like his own personal kingdom. Men get hurt, he does not care. Owes them wages, he does not pay. And I have heard rumors about how he treats his wife, though nobody talks about it openly." "She is not going back to him," Kieran said flatly. "But he is going to come for her, and I need to know who I can count on if it comes to trouble." Jacob did not hesitate. "You can count on me, and I know others who will help. Tom Bradley at the livery, he has no love for Vaughn. Sarah Chen, who runs the boarding house, she has been helping women escape bad situations for years. Even Marshall Peters, he is in Vaughn's pocket somewhat, but his heart is decent. He might look the other way if we play it right. I do not want violence if it can be avoided." "Then we need leverage." Jacob thought for a moment. "Let me talk to some people quietly. If Vaughn is as bad as you say, there are probably others who want to see him brought down. Maybe we can find a way to make him back off without gunfire." "I would appreciate that." Kieran gripped his friend's shoulder. "Thank you, Jake. You helped me plenty of times. This is just returning the favor." Kieran spent the next few hours quietly visiting with the people Jacob had mentioned. Tom Bradley, a former cavalry scout with a limp from an old arrow wound, agreed immediately to help. Sarah Chen, a middle-aged Chinese woman who had come west with her husband during the railroad construction and stayed after he died, listened carefully and nodded. "I have helped 3 women get away from him," she said in her precise English. "One of them had a broken arm he gave her. Another was with child and he kicked her until she lost it. This man is evil, Mr. Anderson. You are doing right thing to protect this Clara. Can you help?" "Yes. I know judge in Santa Fe, good man who does not like men who hurt women. If we can get testimony, maybe we can make legal case." It was mid-afternoon when Kieran finally started back to the ranch, feeling somewhat better. He had allies now, people who would stand with him if things went bad. But as he rode up the trail toward his property, he saw smoke rising in the distance, and his blood ran cold. He dug his heels into his horse's sides, racing the last 2 miles. As he crested the ridge above his ranch, his worst fears were realized. 6 men on horseback surrounded his house, and one of them was pounding on the door. Another had set fire to his barn, and flames were already consuming the dry wood. Kieran drew his rifle from its scabbard and fired a shot into the air. The men turned, and he recognized the scarred man from before. Standing among them was someone new, a well-dressed man in his 40s with cold, dark eyes. That had to be Vernon Vaughn. "Get off my property," Kieran shouted, bringing his horse to a sliding stop 50 feet from the group. Vernon smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Mr. Anderson, I presume." "I am Vernon Vaughn. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I have nothing of yours." "Oh, I think you do. My wife. I know she is in that house. Send her out and we will leave peacefully." "She does not want to go with you, and she is not property you can just claim." Vernon's expression hardened. "She is my legal wife. The law says she must return to me. The law also says you cannot beat a woman near to death, but that did not stop you, did it?" Several of Vernon's men shifted uncomfortably. Clearly not all of them were comfortable with what they were doing. Vernon noticed and his jaw clenched. "You have no idea what you are talking about. Clara is delicate, prone to hysteria and lies. She needs care that only I can provide." "Funny, she seemed perfectly sane and truthful to me. What she needs is to be away from you." Inside the house, Clara watched through a crack in the shutters, her heart pounding. She could see Kieran facing down 7 men alone, and it was because of her. She could not let him die for her. She had to end this. Before she could think better of it, she unlocked the door and stepped out onto the porch, the revolver hidden in the folds of her skirt. Vernon's face lit up when he saw her. "Clara, darling, I have been so worried. Come here now, let us go home." "No," Clara said, and her voice was steadier than she felt. "I am not going anywhere with you, Vernon." His expression darkened. "Do not be foolish. You are my wife. You belong with me." "I do not belong to anyone. I want a divorce." Vernon laughed, a harsh sound. "There will be no divorce. You will come home and you will be punished for this embarrassment you have caused me. The longer you resist, the worse it will be." "Clara, go back inside," Kieran said urgently. "Let me handle this." But Clara ignored him. She raised the revolver and pointed it straight at Vernon. Several of his men went for their guns, but she cocked the hammer and they froze. "I am a good shot now," Clara said. "Kieran taught me. And the first bullet has your name on it, Vernon. So tell your men to leave, or I will make you a widow instead of the other way around." Vernon's face flushed with rage. "You would not dare. You do not have the courage. Try me." And there was something in Clara's eyes that made him believe her. The standoff held for a long moment. Then there was the sound of more horses, and everyone turned to see Marshal Peters riding up with Tom Bradley and 3 other men from town. The marshal pulled up and surveyed the scene. "What is going on here?" "This man is trespassing on my land and threatening my guest," Kieran said. "And he set fire to my barn." "That woman is my wife," Vernon said. "I have a legal right to take her home." Marshal Peters looked uncomfortable. He glanced at Vernon, then at Clara with her gun, then at Kieran. "Mr. Vaughn, maybe we should discuss this in town, legal-like." "There is nothing to discuss. She is coming with me." "No, she is not," Tom Bradley spoke up. "I have had enough of you, Vaughn. You run roughshod over this whole territory, hurting people and thinking your money protects you. Well, not anymore." One of Vernon's own men, a younger fellow who looked barely 20, suddenly spoke up. "I am not shooting anyone over this. This is not right." He holstered his gun and rode off. Another man followed, then another. Suddenly Vernon was down to just 3 men, while Kieran's side had grown to 7. The balance had shifted. Vernon's face was purple with rage. "You will all regret this. I will destroy every one of you." "Empty threats from a coward who beats women," Kieran said. "Now leave, and if you come back, if you ever come near Clara again, I will kill you myself." Vernon stared at him with pure hatred, but he was outgunned and outmanned. "This is not over," he hissed. "Yes, it is," Marshal Peters said, finally finding his backbone. "Mr. Vaughn, I think you better come with me into town. We need to have a conversation about some complaints I have been receiving." "Complaints? From who?" "From workers at your mine, from merchants you owe money, and from ladies who Sarah Chen has been helping. You see, once people heard that someone was finally standing up to you, they all started talking." The marshal smiled grimly. "Turns out you have made a lot of enemies, Vaughn, and I am done looking the other way." Vernon's remaining men had already started backing their horses away, clearly wanting no part of this. Vernon sat alone on his horse, his face twisted with rage and something else now, fear. "Clara," he said, and his voice had changed, become almost pleading. "Please, I am your husband. We can work this out." Clara lowered the gun slightly but did not put it away. "You stopped being my husband the first time you hit me. As far as I am concerned, you are just the man I am divorcing. You think you will be better off without me. You are nothing. You have nothing. You will end up destitute. Better to be poor and free than wealthy and in a cage." Vernon opened his mouth to argue more, but Marshal Peters cut him off. "Come on, Vaughn, to town. Now." As they rode away, Vernon turned back once to look at Clara, and the expression on his face made her shudder. But then Kieran was there, climbing the porch steps, and she fell into his arms. "It is all right," he murmured, holding her tight. "You are safe. You were so brave." "I could not let him hurt you," Clara said into his chest. "I could not." "We need to put out that fire," Tom Bradley called, and everyone sprang into action. The barn was mostly lost, but they managed to save the animals and keep the flames from spreading. By the time they were done, it was full dark and everyone was exhausted and covered in soot. Sarah Chen had ridden out with one of the men, and she insisted on staying the night to help Clara, which Kieran gratefully accepted. The men promised to return in the morning to help rebuild, and slowly they all dispersed, leaving Kieran, Clara, and Sarah at the ranch. Sarah made tea while Kieran and Clara cleaned up. Then they all sat around the table and Sarah explained what she had been doing. "I sent telegram to Judge in Santa Fe. He is coming next week. If you testify about what Vernon did, plus other women I have helped, we can maybe have marriage annulled or at least get divorce granted. Judge is good man, believes women should be protected." "What if Vernon tries to stop it?" Clara asked. "Marshall is arresting him tonight on charges of assault and intimidation. We'll hold him for at least few days. And Tom Bradley is gathering other evidence, debts unpaid, violence against workers. Vernon Vaughn is going to have much bigger problems than one runaway wife." Clara felt tears streaming down her face. "Is it really over? Can I really be free?" "Yes," Sarah said firmly. "You are free. This man," she gestured to Kieran, "he gave you that gift, and he is good man, so you hold on to him." Kieran and Clara looked at each other across the table, and something passed between them that made Sarah smile. "I am going to sleep now," Sarah said, standing. "I will take other room. You two have much to talk about, I think." After she left, Kieran and Clara sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Clara spoke. "I meant what I said earlier. I could not let him hurt you. When I saw you facing all those men, I realized that I care about you more than I care about my own safety." "I feel the same way," Kieran admitted. "When I saw that smoke, when I thought something might have happened to you, I have never been so terrified in my life." "This is fast," Clara said. "We have known each other less than a week. Sometimes you just know. My grandfather told me once that he knew he would marry my grandmother 5 minutes after meeting her. They had 50 good years together." Clara moved around the table and took his hand. "I did not think I could ever feel this way again, about anyone. Vernon killed something in me, or I thought he did, but with you I feel alive again. I feel hopeful." Kieran stood and cupped her face gently in his hands. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes," she whispered. He kissed her softly, carefully, as if she might break. But Clara pressed closer, wrapping her arms around his neck, and the kiss deepened. It was nothing like the rough, demanding kisses Vernon had forced on her. This was gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "Stay with me," Kieran said. Not just until this is over. Stay with me always. Are you asking me to marry you? Eventually, yes. But first you need time to heal, to get your divorce and be truly free. Then when you are ready, if you still want me, I will marry you properly. Clara smiled through her tears. I will want you. I already do. They held each other in the firelight, and for the first time in years, Clara felt completely safe. The future was uncertain. There would be legal battles and rebuilding to do, but she was not facing it alone anymore. The next week passed in a blur of activity. True to their word, Tom Bradley and several other men came out to help Kieran rebuild the barn. The women of Pino's Altos showed up with food and supplies, and Clara found herself welcomed into a community she had not known existed. Vernon was arrested and held on multiple charges. More people came forward with stories of his violence and corruption. The mine workers organized and demanded their back wages. Merchants filed liens against his property. It seemed that once someone finally stood up to him, everyone else found their courage too. The judge arrived from Santa Fe as promised, a gray-haired man named Williams who listened carefully to Clara's testimony. Sarah had gathered 3 other women who had escaped Vernon's employ, and they told similar stories of brutality and intimidation. Judge Williams declared the marriage void on grounds of duress and abuse, effective immediately. Clara walked out of that courtroom a free woman, legally and completely. Kieran was waiting outside, and when she told him the news, he swept her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. "It is really over," Clara said, still hardly believing it. "I am free." "You are free," Kieran confirmed. "So what do you want to do first?" Clara thought about it. "I want to go home. To the ranch, our ranch, if you will have me." "Always," Kieran said. They rode back together in the golden afternoon light. The new barn was finished, even better than the old one. The cattle were thriving. The garden was producing abundantly. It was everything Clara had dreamed of during those dark days with Vernon, a real home, built on freedom and choice. Over the following months, Clara and Kieran built a life together. They worked side by side during the day, learning each other's rhythms and ways. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sunset, talking about everything and nothing. Slowly, carefully, Clara healed. The nightmares came less frequently. Her smiles came more easily. Kieran was patient, never pushing her, always letting her set the pace. When she finally came to him one night and said she was ready, truly ready to move forward, he made love to her so tenderly that she wept with the beauty of it. This was what it was supposed to be like, she realized. This was what she had been missing. Spring came to New Mexico territory, painting the desert in unexpected colors. On a warm April morning in 1879, Clara and Kieran stood together in the small church in Pino's Altos and exchanged vows. It was a simple ceremony, attended by the friends they had made, the people who had stood with them when it mattered. Clara wore a dress that Sarah had helped her make, simple white cotton with blue embroidery. Kieran wore his best shirt and a nervous smile. When the preacher said he could kiss his bride, Kieran did so with such obvious love that several women in the congregation sighed. They had a celebration at the ranch afterward, with food and music and dancing. As the sun set and the party began to wind down, Kieran pulled Clara away from the crowd and led her to the top of the ridge that overlooked their land. "You see all of this?" he asked, gesturing to the valley below. "It is all ours now. Everything we build from here is ours together." "I never thought I would have this," Clara said softly. "A real home, a husband who loves me, a future I can look forward to." "You deserve all of it and more," Kieran said, "and I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how precious you are." Clara turned to face him, the last light of day gilding her hair. "I love you, Kieran Anderson." "I love you too, Clara Anderson." He liked the sound of that, her new name, a fresh start for both of them. They stood together as darkness fell, watching stars emerge one by one, and both of them felt the same thing. They were home. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm over the next year. The ranch prospered and they were able to buy more land, expand the herd. Clara proved to have a good head for business, and she started keeping the accounts and managing sales. Together, they made a formidable team. Vernon Vaughn, meanwhile, had lost everything. The mine was seized to pay his debts. He faced trial for assault and lost. The last anyone heard, he had slunk away to California, a broken man. Clara did not spare him much thought. He was part of her past, and she was focused entirely on her future. In the fall of 1879, Clara realized she was pregnant. She told Kieran one evening as they sat on the porch, and the look of pure joy on his face made her heart swell. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" "I am the happiest man alive." He kissed her gently. "Are you scared?" "A little," she admitted. "But mostly I am excited. This is our child, made from love. That makes all the difference." The pregnancy was not easy. Clara was sick for the first few months, and the last month she was so uncomfortable she could hardly sleep. But Kieran was there every step of the way, patient and supportive. Sarah came to stay with them as the due date approached, and her calm presence helped ease Clara's nerves. On a cool night in May of 1880, Clara went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when Kieran feared he might lose her. But Clara was strong, stronger than anyone gave her credit for, and as dawn broke over the New Mexico hills, a baby's cry filled the house. "A boy," Sarah announced, handing the squalling infant to Clara. "A healthy, strong boy." Clara looked down at her son, at his tiny, perfect face and shock of dark hair, and felt love so intense it was almost painful. Kieran sat beside her on the bed, staring at them both with wonder. "He is perfect," Kieran whispered. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but never quite decided. Now, looking at her son, Clara knew. "Thomas," she said. "After your brother who died in the war, Thomas Anderson." Kieran's eyes filled with tears. "You would do that, of course. Family is everything." Little Thomas grew quickly, a healthy, happy baby who brought light and laughter to the ranch. Clara and Kieran marveled at every milestone, every smile and sound. Parenthood suited them both, though it was exhausting in ways they had not anticipated. When Thomas was 6 months old, they had him baptized in the church in Pinos Altos. Half the town showed up, as Clara and Kieran had become beloved members of the community. They stood as godparents to other children, hosted dinners and dances at the ranch, and generally made themselves part of the fabric of life in that corner of New Mexico territory. "Can you believe this is our life?" Clara said one evening as they watched Thomas play on a blanket in the yard. "2 years ago I was sleeping in your stable, terrified and alone. Now I have everything I could ever want." "You were always meant to have this," Kieran said, pulling her close. "You just had to get through the darkness to reach the light. I could not have done it without you. We saved each other, I think." He kissed the top of her head. "I was just existing before you came along. Now I am truly living." The years rolled by, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Thomas grew into a sturdy boy with his mother's gray eyes and his father's determined chin. When he was 3, Clara gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth, a tiny, fierce creature who had both parents wrapped around her little finger from day one. The ranch continued to prosper. They built a larger house, with real glass windows and wood floors. They bought more cattle and hired help during busy seasons. Clara started a small school in Pinos Altos, teaching reading and arithmetic to children whose parents worked at the mines. Kieran was elected to the town council and worked to make Pino's Altos a better place to live. Vernon Vaughn became nothing more than a bad memory, a cautionary tale people told about the wages of cruelty. Clara sometimes thought about the other women still trapped in situations like hers had been, and she worked with Sarah to help them when she could. They provided safe places to stay, help finding work, legal assistance when needed. It gave Clara purpose beyond her family, a way to turn her suffering into something meaningful. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Kieran surprised Clara with a trip to Santa Fe, their first time away from the children overnight. They stayed in a nice hotel, ate in a restaurant, and walked around the plaza like tourists. It felt both strange and wonderful to be just the two of them again. "Do you ever miss it?" Kieran asked as they watched the sunset from the hotel balcony. "The life you might have had if things had been different," Clara thought about it. "You mean if my father had not gambled, if my mother had lived, if I had never married Vernon?" "Yes." "No," she said honestly, "because all of those things led me to you, and I would not trade what we have for anything. Our life might not be easy, but it is good, it is real, and it is ours." "I feel the same way." Kieran pulled her close. "Though I wish you had not had to suffer to get here." "We all have scars, Kieran. What matters is what we do with them. I could have let Vernon break me completely, but I chose to fight. And you gave me a reason to keep fighting." They made love that night with the same passion and tenderness they had always shared, and Clara marveled that 5 years into marriage, she still wanted him as much as she had that first time. This was what a real partnership looked like, built on respect and trust and genuine affection. More children came over the years. A second son, James, in 1884. Twin girls, Abigail and Caroline, in 1886. Each one was loved and welcomed into their growing family. The house expanded to accommodate them all, and the ranch rang with the sounds of children's laughter and play. Clara bloomed in ways she had never imagined possible. She was a mother, a teacher, a rancher's wife, and most importantly, herself. She had opinions and voiced them. She made decisions and stood by them. She was a full partner in every aspect of their life together, and Kieran valued her contributions just as much as his own. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Clara would think back to that desperate woman sleeping in the stable, terrified and hopeless. She seemed like a different person now, someone Clara had once been but was no longer. That woman had needed saving. This woman, the one she had become, was strong enough to save herself. But she was grateful she had not had to. Kieran changed too over the years. The grim, solitary man who had found Clara became warmer, more open. Fatherhood had softened him in the best ways, though he could still be tough when needed. He was respected in the community, known as a fair man who kept his word and stood up for what was right. In the summer of 1889, they celebrated 10 years of marriage with a big party at the ranch. It seemed like everyone they knew came, bearing gifts and good wishes. As Clara looked around at the crowd, at their children playing with friends, at the prosperous ranch they had built together, she felt overcome with gratitude. Late in the evening, after most guests had left, Clara and Kieran walked out to the stable where it had all begun. It had been rebuilt after the fire, but Clara could still remember exactly where she had been lying that night, exhausted and terrified. "If someone had told me then what my life would become, I would not have believed them," she said. "Did you know?" Kieran asked. "That first night when you woke up and I was standing there, did some part of you know this was where you belonged?" Clara thought back, trying to remember. "I do not know if I knew exactly, but I remember looking at you and thinking that your eyes were kind. And I remember feeling, just for a moment, like maybe everything would be all right. I had not felt that in so long." "I knew," Kieran said. "Maybe not right that moment, but soon after. I knew you were going to change my life. I just did not realize how much. For the better, I hope. For the infinitely better. He took both her hands. You made me believe in goodness again, Clara. You showed me what love is supposed to look like, and you gave me a family, a real family, something I never thought I would have. We did that together, Clara corrected. All of it together. They stood in the stable doorway, the same place where their story had begun, and watched the stars come out over New Mexico. The air was warm and smelled of hay and horses, and the desert flowers Clara had planted around the yard. From the house came the sound of their children getting ready for bed, arguing and laughing in equal measure. I would do it all again, Clara said suddenly. Every hard moment, every terrible thing if it meant ending up here with you. You do not have to, Kieran said. Those days are over. From here on out, it is just us building the life we want. Then let us make it a beautiful life. We already have, Kieran said, kissing her gently, but we can always make it better. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, Clara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had been so lost once, so broken down that she had curled up in a stranger's stable with nothing left but a desperate plea. Please do not send me back. Kieran had not sent her back. He had given her a chance to stay, to heal, to become who she was meant to be. And in saving her, she had somehow saved him too. They had built something remarkable together, not just a ranch or a family, but a true home in every sense of the word. The years continued to pass, as years do. The children grew up strong and healthy, each one carrying forward the values their parents had instilled. Fairness, compassion, hard work, and above all, the belief that every person deserved dignity and freedom. Thomas, their eldest, took over more and more of the ranch work as he got older, showing a real talent for handling cattle and horses. Elizabeth surprised everyone by developing a passion for medicine, often helping Sarah Chen when she tended to sick folks in town. James had their mother's head for numbers and loved working on the accounts. The twins were still young but already showing distinct personalities. Abigail quiet and thoughtful, Caroline bold and adventurous. In 1892, Thomas got married to a sweet girl from town named Mary, and they built a house on the far edge of the ranch property. A year later, they made Clara and Kieran grandparents with the birth of a daughter. Holding that tiny baby, Clara felt the circle complete. She had given her children the childhood she had never had, full of love and security. And now they were creating their own families, carrying forward the legacy of kindness and strength. Kieran, watching Clara with their granddaughter, fell in love with her all over again. She was 40 now, with silver threading through her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "What are you looking at?" Clara asked, catching his gaze. "My wife, the mother of my children, the love of my life." She smiled, that same smile that had first caught his attention all those years ago. Soft words for an old rancher. "I am serious, Clara. You are everything to me. You always have been." She handed the baby back to Mary and came to stand beside him. "And you are everything to me. We have built something good here, have we not? Better than good. We have built something worth fighting for, worth living for." As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple, Clara leaned her head on Kieran's shoulder. They stood together, watching their family, and both felt the same deep contentment. "You think she knows?" Clara asked softly, nodding toward their granddaughter. "How lucky she is to grow up in a home full of love." "She will," Kieran said, "because we will tell her. We will tell all of them the story of how we found each other, how we fought for our happiness, so they know that no matter how dark things get, there is always hope." "The rancher who found a woman sleeping in his stable," Clara said with a smile. and the woman who woke and asked him not to send her back. Best decision you ever made, not sending me back. Best thing that ever happened to me, you being there to find. They watched the last light fade from the sky, comfortable in the silence that came from years of knowing each other completely. Whatever challenges still lay ahead, they would face them together, just as they always had. As full darkness fell and stars began to emerge, they walked back to the house, where light spilled from the windows and the sounds of family filled the air. Clara paused at the door and looked back one more time at the land they had built their life on. "Home," she said simply. "Home," Kieran agreed, and it was the end.